Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. Today we are here to remember MH17 flight. This is one of the biggest catastrophes against peaceful population in modern history, and today we commemorate the victims and remember them, and we discuss the international cooperation in investigation. And our marathon consists of 4 thematic blocks. We start with diplomatic block, then we will hear Bellingcat investigation group. After this we will have the break, and then we will have a briefing with the security service representative, and then we will have information panel, and we will discuss how Russians use narratives in the fight against Ukraine and the West. And we use Facebook page of UCMC. We have simultaneous translation into Russian or into English in order to spread information. And now we will have a minute of silence and a short video. Dear speakers and guests, we are going to start the first panel. Please take your seats. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I am Taras Kachka. I represent International Renaissance Foundation, and here is Oksana Zolotariova, acting director of the Department of International Law at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And also we will have Ambassador to US Valerii Chalyi and Ambassador Vsevolod Chentsov, Ambassador of Ukraine to the Netherlands. And maybe we will be joined by colleagues from the Netherlands Embassy in Ukraine. So if you're here, please show up. And our aim is to tell you about cooperation, starting first minutes of the tragedy and where it leads to, because the main in any tragedy is to restore justice. And in all catastrophes, the issue of justice is not so quick as tragedy itself. It will take a lot of efforts of many governments. That's why the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Diplomatic Corps of Ukraine, they contribute a lot in order to help to restore justice, because this is not a simple matter. I would like to start and give the floor to Oksana. She will tell us what was done during these 5 years and what is the stage of work to restore justice, because this is investigation that is going on and bringing responsibility of different persons at different levels. So what is the starting point? If we start with the story itself, the first step was Ukraine established cooperation with all the countries whose citizens were on board this Boeing, and joint investigation team was formed. These are prosecutors and investigators of Netherlands, Belgium, Australia, Malaysia, Ukraine, and they started the investigation, and this is unprecedented investigation. The number of investigators who participate in a joint investigation team is about 200 people, and they deal with the issues of criminal persecution of those who are guilty, and according to Montreal Convention, any bringing down of the plane, any air traffic accident is investigated by the technical group. And the next day, we transferred the right to investigate to the Netherlands, and in accordance to Montreal Convention in 2015, Dutch Safety Board provided a report, and they established how this Boeing was brought down, this MH17 flight. And it has shown that it was brought down by the missile that was launched from Buk, that was in non-controlled territory of Ukraine. For Russians, this was a difficult moment because they tried and they continue to try to show that there are different theories how this plane was brought down, that whether this was a plane or a missile that was launched from the air, but this Dutch Safety Board report established the truth, and all the countries, they understand that the issue is not only about technical investigation and criminal investigation. Ukraine, together with the Netherlands and other countries, they wanted to create an international tribunal in accordance with Security Council resolution, and this is the only mechanism to provide decisions that will be obligatory to all. In 2015, the relevant resolution was put on the vote of the Security Council, and it will happen at the end of July, but it was vetoed by Russian Federation, and we continued our way to bring those who are guilty to justice. And all 5 countries that are the members of GIT, we took decision that the best way, because the resolution failed, so we decided that there should be criminal persecution, and the decision was taken in accordance with the Dutch law. And it happened maybe last year. The agreement was signed on cooperation in this criminal case between The Hague and Kiev, and it means that jurisdiction is within Ukraine, but this will be done according to Dutch legislation in the court near Amsterdam. And GIT presented the names of the first suspects. This happened on the 19th of June. They presented first 4 names, and now the prosecutor's office of Ukraine transferred the materials concerning these 4 people to the Dutch court. In accordance with all procedures, the court may happen with the presence in absentia of the suspects, and we expect this investigation, this court in March next year. And so we have 4 suspects, but we believe that investigation will be able to show more people who are involved in this crime. especially those who pushed the button in this book, and from which the missile was launched. So we won't stop at this criminal proceedings. We have 3 tracks to bring those who are guilty to justice. So I've told you about first one. This is criminal track. Second is that Australia and the Netherlands, after presentation of JIT on the 23rd of May, when JIT provided evidence of transportation of book from the territory of Russian Federation by 53rd Brigade from Kursk, Australia and Netherlands addressed Russia with the proposal to start negotiations. This is a normal diplomatic practice in order to bring Russia to justice, and Ukraine supports this initiative. And we provide our support to Australians and Netherlands, and we also deal a lot with this problem. And as you may know, now they consider at the international, court a big case of Ukraine against Russian Federation initiated by Ukraine concerning financing of terror. And one of the elements of this case is bringing down of Malaysia flight MH17. And in June this year, there were hearings concerning jurisdiction of international, court in this case. And this is a normal practice in international courts when the party, such as Russian Federation in our case, they believe that there is no jurisdiction, but we believe that we will be able to win the part of jurisdiction in this case and to consider this case in essence. And this legal problems, this is secondary. The most important is that now on the site of International Court, a memorandum was presented, the memorandum of Ukraine, and you may find this information online. This is accessible. And part of it says about bringing down of MH17. Unfortunately, Russians blocked publication of annexes to our memorandum, but the list of annexes, we have it on the site of court, and you may find interesting annexes there that say about what Ukraine had as a basis for the case, and the evidence provided by Dutch police officers that processed all the evidence for their criminal case. And we hope that the decision concerning jurisdiction in this case will be approved until end of this year, and we will consider this case in essence, and international law, as Taras said, this is a long story. And maybe in several years we will have decisions in international, court. Maybe Australians and Dutch, maybe they will have it quicker. We will hope that they will succeed also in their work. Also, there is a European Court on Human Rights, and there is a block of cases there. There are cases filed by relatives of those people who died in this catastrophe, and as we know now, Ukraine thinks about whether to join as a third party to this case. We will live and see. To sum up, the issue was, first, there should be technical investigation that Oksana mentioned about Dutch safety board, and they carried out technical investigation later on. because the Russia blocked special international tribunal decision was taken to carry out investigation at the national level, but coordination was achieved through agreement. Then there was criminal persecution in accordance with agreement between the states, and parallel there is a second area. This is the responsibility of the state, and now we see on the screen Valerii, and we will ask this question to him. And moreover, we have a question of responsibility of the state, because this is not about physical persons, but also there are filing of cases of relatives of the victims to the court, and also what Ukraine does in the UNO court, and also the dialogue between Australia, Netherlands, and Russian Federation about state responsibility. And this is without any references to the convention, but they're trying to convince Russia to confirm their responsibility for this action. So I would like to address our ambassadors, and each of them, they play a role in the process. Valerii Chalyi represents Ukraine and USA, and he is involved with this case. He had a mission in Ukraine before going to US, and I would like first to address him, and I would like to ask a question about impressions, first decisions in cooperation with the countries who suffered from this attack 5 years ago, and how it happened, and how important was to reach understanding, how to act, how to deal with this case. You're given the floor.
Good morning. Thank you for invitation to participate. I would like to say that the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center is contributing to a very important coverage when it covered the story from its beginning, and when it involves representatives from the international community. So first of all, we established communication with our partners, and now we continue to maintain this close communication. But I would like to add that unfortunately this is just one episode, very tragic episode of the Russians' hybrid war against Ukraine, and at that time for us, it was absolutely clear that the attack was strong, but it was covered, it was masked, and at that time, international community was unable to understand what was going on and to condemn Russia's actions. And then the tragedy of MH17 happened, and the international community had changed its vision radically. Recollecting those days, I remember our impression from the contacts with the relatives and families of the victims. President Poroshenko at that time communicated by phone very closely with the Netherlands, with Australia, and at that time, the interest and pain of ordinary people, families of the victims, became very close to Ukraine. Immediately, the governmental task force was established. At that time, Ukrainian bureaucracy, which is rather famous for its red tape, it had shown extreme efficiency and interacting with our colleagues from those countries which were involved into investigation. We managed to act very efficiently, and all of our partners recognized that, because all of us were united with one idea: to counteract to those who were guilty and to bring them to responsibility. Upon request of the President of Ukraine, I had to prepare and to open of the exhibition devoted to this disaster, and at that time we invited all the ambassadors, Western ambassadors in Ukraine, and at that time, after that exhibition, it became obvious to many foreign partners that the missile was brought from Russia, that the order to use it was given from Russia, and immediately it had revealed that it was the act of hybrid war against Ukraine. Before today's event in Kiev, similar TV marathon was launched in the United States. Yesterday, I joined the State Secretary when he opened a round table where the investigators and those who were involved into this investigation, experts, politicians, they came together to discuss that event and came to rather clear conclusion. I do not think that we will need to wait for many years. I believe that rather soon, the next year, all the legal obstacles, all the legal items will be overcome, and we will understand that this is just part of the war, that Ukraine is facing the situation of armed conflict with Russia, that Russian Federation does not recognize its responsibility. They do not wish to comply with the international legal standards, international law standards, and unfortunately many actions of countries, they encourage aggressors to continue the aggression against Ukraine. Today, the United States had passed the resolution which very clearly states position of Russia as an aggressor, and explains that Ukraine is a victim, is the objective of Russia's aggression, and that Ukraine continues to defend itself, but the disaster of MH17 had proved that without joint action and joint firm position, it is not possible to prevent future crimes and even to suffer a defeat from Russia. Some members of parliament in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe had shifted their focus of attention and want to release sanctions, and this is a mistake. It shows again that people today in today's culture are unable to maintain focused, and despite of that fact, we should show very clear negative position as to those countries who support financing of terrorism, who support terrorists. They should be clearly condemned by the international community, and we have a strong resolution to finalize this investigation, to bring to responsibility who will be recognized guilty by court. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Chalyi, for your contribution to that big work, big deal. Now I would like to switch to The Hague. In The Hague we have Ukrainian ambassador to the Netherlands. In The Hague, much circumstances and much actions are concentrated, besides the fact that the Netherlands were main country whose citizens suffered most from the disaster, but this is also the country where investigation is going on and the hearings are kept in the Hague region, so to say. When we speak about criminal investigation and that national court which will hear the case, the future criminal hearings will be in the Schiphol town, and also there is the place where Ukrainian case is investigated. Mr. Vsevolod Chentsov, His Excellency Ambassador of Ukraine in the Netherlands, is involved in all those investigations, both the de jure and de facto. De jure, he is representing Ukraine. De facto he stands for Ukrainian position and is involved in all the processes. Besides that, he is an operational liaison between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and GIT and Criminal Investigation Group. That's why I would ask Mr. Chentsov to describe what's going on and how that experience of 5-year cooperation it improved understanding of the Netherlands society, what had happened in Ukraine. And would you please characterize whether the cooperation between Ukraine and the Netherlands in this area is efficient? Good morning, Taras. Good morning, dear colleagues. Thank you for this opportunity. Can you hear me, by the way? Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. You can continue. I would like to add a couple of words about the early days of that story and describe what we were able to do during all that period from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and from the defense point of view. Several days upon the disaster, the UN resolution number 2166 was passed by the Security Council, which authorized the Russian Federation to support and assist the investigation. Now, these days, when we are approaching to the final stages to the investigation, we are able to state obvious absence of the assistance from Russian Federation, and this clearly demonstrates that Russia has violated its international commitments. As for development of our international cooperation with the Netherlands, within a year, we were able to present the statute of the International Tribunal to the attention of international community, which nevertheless was blocked by the Russian Federation. The next attempt was made by 5 countries, which coordinated the joint investigation effort. Was again a joint statute for investigation of this case, but unfortunately Belgium faced difficulties, which legislation prevented it from joint participation in this investigation process. Thus, we had to transfer jurisdiction from Ukraine to the Netherlands, which in this case would be able to investigate the case for the sake of all stakeholders. This demonstrates the difficulty that we had to overcome and how quickly we moved towards the desirable results. We had established the legal basis and jurisdiction. We had gained political support. We have a political memorandum signed by all 5 countries. We have financial memorandum which regulates the financial contribution from each country to this investigation. And as for cooperation at the law enforcement bodies level, we of course cooperate, but this area, this field is fully independent. This is the strength of the whole case. When yesterday I heard questions about differences in positions between Malaysian politicians and Malaysian law enforcement bodies. The Malaysians explained that law enforcement bodies in Malaysia, they are independent from politicians, and they will be able to present absolutely independent opinion to the court hearings. That is what Russia is unable to understand, that the proofs will be independent from the position of Malaysian government. Yesterday we had here in The Hague the international conference, and major organizer was the Foundation of the Victims of Malaysian Tragedy and Australian Foundation. And at this conference, all the issues related to this disaster were discussed. The law enforcement area, then psychological rehabilitation to the victims, and also the aspect of national contribution was discussed, and as well as attempts to get compensations. Today we will have memorial event in Schiphol, and this shows that here in the Netherlands we preserve focus on that tragic events, and this shows our readiness to cooperate on the around the court proceedings. And thank you, Your Excellency. It seems to me that the shared joint position may sound a bit annoying, but and a piece of routine, but this routine, which is unavoidable, it takes a lot of time, because here we deal with the national legislative and law systems, and that is what His Excellency had said. The independence of the investigation and quality of that investigation, high quality of that investigation, which are coordinated by the Netherlands law enforcement bodies, they are actually a guarantee of the fair justice. And the version, the investigative version as of today is as follows: that the Russian Federation had supplied the missile installation book, from which and they ordered to launch a missile which had crashed, which targeted the aircraft, and it crashed. And here much attention is devoted by Russian Federation to creating obstacles to the investigation, and first prevent the investigation from finalization, and thus prevent future justice, because in result of justice verdict, the Russian Federation will be brought to responsibility. In my opinion, this is a good time to ask your questions, and we would ask you to speak on the topic, because here during this session our objective was to show the efforts of our diplomats in revival of justice, in bringing to responsibility of those who might be blamed or recognized as guilty. Ater Victoria Boyka. Why Malaysian law enforcement bodies does not see enough proofs First of all, I would like to point your attention to the fact what His Excellency mentioned, that Malaysian law enforcement bodies independently cooperate with the investigation task force and a joint investigation task force, and those statements which I heard from Malaysian party, they originated from politicians. Joint investigation group, when it works, they make decision after voting of unilateral five stakeholder voting, and the Malaysians had to sign the suspicion, official statement about suspicion and about conclusion. Your Excellency, no comments because you're absolutely right. If there are no comments, maybe our participants would like to add something. Although it seems to me that, as far as I know, it was rather comprehensive correct description of the situation. It might sound rather annoying, but and dull, but actually, in order to bring the guilty criminals to responsibility, it takes a lot of effort from all 5 participants of this joint investigation group, and this is a good example how this could be done under present conditions. As you have seen from the international UN tribunals, intergovernmental courts, and other proceedings against Russia. Among all those instruments, this task force in this investigation is one of the most efficient. Thank you to Mr. Valerii, to Mr. Vsevolod, and to Oksana, and one last remark from me. I would like to emphasize that Ukraine had proven its capacity to cooperate with international partners from different legal systems in this very sad and tragic case. Of course, the reason for that, the underlying reason for that is very tragic, but this GIT work was a unique, a very strong proof that Ukraine is able to interact at the international level. Currently, Ukraine is passing through through amendments to the criminal code, and actually in designing our cooperation with the Dutch criminal investigation system, we had to test these new amendments in the Ukrainian criminal code, and actually we had to contribute to the amendments made by Ukrainian parliament to this criminal code. So this document will, that joint document which we had signed, will come to force before March 9, when the investigation, the court hearings will start. That agreement which you mentioned was very important, which entailed some amendments to our criminal proceedings code, which now allows to prosecute those who will be recognized guilty in the crash. So this was a presentation of our position. Thank you for your attention, and with this we finish this briefing. In some 10 minutes we will have the next event. At noon we will start our interview with the Bellingcat group.